Hello, everyone. This is Crisp McDonald with you, and today's Timer Tip Tuesday, we have a special guest. We have Jamie Orr joining us from Run the East, and um, a bit about Jamie. He is out of North Carolina. He founded Run the East back in 2010, and he continues to own and operate the business. It's mainly timing business, but they do a number of other things in the North Carolina or Eastern North Carolina. I think they've spread out since then. And before that, he worked as a partner with another timing company and has been involved in the race side of things since '99. And so, with that being said, I'll share with or let Jamie tell us a little bit about his company, Run the East, and what they've been up to this year. We just had an offline conversation about how busy this past week was. So for those of you joining, we hope that all of your turkey trots went well. And if this is your first time on one of our webinars, you should have a control panel on the right-hand side where you can click to ask questions, have both Shelly and Matt on the background. But this is more conversational. So if Jamie brings up something that you want to hear more about, please message us, let us know, and we will float those questions out to Jamie so he can make sure to answer them. So again, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, tell us a little bit about Run the East and your experience in the race industry.
Sure. Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Yeah, so as Chris was saying at the beginning, I started the company Run the East back in 2010. But prior to that, I had worked for about 10 or 11 years in what started out as a running club and kind of evolved into a partnership in a timing company as the club kind of fell apart. So did that for a number of years, working with events primarily here in Eastern North Carolina. And then in 2010, made the jump to start Run the East, which I'm the sole owner of. And so we started out back in 2010. We had about 40 events that we worked with, to this year about just over 160 events that we'll work with by the end of the year. And all the events are in North Carolina, predominantly the eastern part of the state, but a few in other parts of the state as well.
Gotcha.
And so we do primarily timing, as Chris said, but we also do some help races with some other stuff like race management, marketing, things like that as well.
So, and on the RunSignup side, I know just from knowing you for years, you use a number of the RunSignup products. Tell us a little bit about your experience, like what specifically you're timing with race day scoring, but you haven't always timed with race day scoring, right?
Correct. So when I started the business, obviously back then there was no such thing as race day scoring.
Right.
And so, but we had originally started using RunScore, and used that up until race day scoring became available. And RunScore was a good solution for us for a number of years. And we timed exclusively with RunScore for a number of years. But then when race day scoring first came out, and as I recall, I think I started evaluating it, playing around with it back when it was still in beta, just to kind of get a feel for it. And the real thing that appealed to me about race day scoring was the kind of a simpler, kind of easier to work with interface, primarily for my other timing crews, because I come from an IT background, so I'm not really intimidated by a more command-based interface like RunScore. But nowadays the majority of my timers are younger than I am and are not from that IT background, and so that was the main thing that appealed to me at first about race day scoring, was being able to more quickly and easily onboard new timers to be able to scale the business. Because back early on, it was mostly me. And
Mhm.
then I brought on like one or two other timers. But now we've grown to the point where, like I was sharing with you before we went live, that we had 5 races on Thanksgiving morning. So I had to have crews out at all of these events. And so that was the main motivator for us in moving to race day scoring, was the ability to have an easier learning curve, to be able to train new timers, get them up and running, and have them able to go time races without having to invest a significant amount of training beforehand. And so
So,
now we use race day scoring exclusively. We were still using RunScore for cross country until race day scoring added cross country support, and so then we've now made the full switch over.
nice. Well, so how many timers do you have at this point?
We have right now a total of 8 lead timers, and total staff between lead timers, assistant timers, registration people, 23 right now.
Wow, wow. So that's great growth. Have you seen most of that grow? Like, was that the size of your company back in 2019 as well, or have you grown
No,
or shrunk since then?
no, I would say we've grown since then. Like a lot of other um, companies, it took longer than I had originally thought before we kind of got back to somewhat normal number of events. But
Hmm.
this year, specifically this fall, we've have the busiest fall that we've ever had. And I think part of that is the kind of coming out, recovering from COVID. The other part is more that from a staffing standpoint, we've now got enough staff to be able to take on those 5 races on a Saturday, which we didn't have in the past. So
Gotcha.
combination of those factors, I think, led to this fall being as busy as it's been.
So it sounds like, I mean, you might have competition in your area, but it sounds like you're doing a good job of expanding through that competition. What do you think is the driving force behind that?
Well, I think thankfully one of we get more races through word of mouth, referrals, people going to a race, things like that. So that having the name and the brand recognition in the community, in the area, has been really helpful to us.
Hmm.
And just going out and doing a good job at the races where we are contracted to work has led to a lot of referral business coming in. And so I think that's been a part of it. And then we also try, while the majority of races are coming to us for timing, we try to bring more value to them than just timing, being with helping them with things like promoting their race to all the people that sign up for our newsletter, by helping them navigate through RunSignup, helping them with best practices, tips, tricks, that type stuff, for
Hmm.
getting the most out of their RunSignup page as well.
Awesome. And so with that side of things, are the newsletter, are you doing that through another provider? Are you doing that through your timer or partner account? How are you managing the newsletter?
So for a long time, we've been using we essentially have a program where we have it hosted on our um, web server,
Hmm.
um, and then use Amazon AWS to send the emails out.
Hmm.
So we have set it up this way prior to the email marketing tool even existing at RunSignup, and it's been working well for us. So we've continued with that
Sure. And it's
that
driving
way.
people back to your website at all times, so which is
Correct. Yeah.
fantastic. Awesome. Awesome. And so with that expansion, and it sounds like the way you're getting most of this business, obviously word of mouth, doing a great job. But you also mentioned, trying to provide as much support for the events as possible. Um, what other tools are you using to help support those events?
Do you mean like Run
Well,
sign
so
up
we
tools
can,
specifically, or?
sure, we can talk about run sign up tools, but I mean, again, as much as, we want to talk about run sign up tools, sure, but are there other tools that you use that you feel like might be beneficial to other timers, maybe even outside of the run sign up brand?
Sure. So I guess I'll talk run sign up first. So obviously,
Hmm.
as we've already talked about, race day scoring. That's
Hmm.
the timing software that we use for timing all the events. Um, the other thing that gets used week in and week out is the Checkin App. Our customers love the Checkin App for the most part, with the exception of the few, you know, holdouts who don't like technology. But for the most part, customers love the Checkin App, and that's been really helpful to us, especially coming to a race that's used a different timing provider in the past who doesn't have something like that. And
Hmm.
I can't remember which event it was, but one recently I was talking with them leading up to the event, and they were talking about how, last year their timer had, they had to cut off registration so the timer could process all these paper forms. And I said, well, paper forms are a thing of the past now. We don't need to worry about paper forms anymore.
Hmm.
And so that's been a great tool from making our life, my staff's life a lot easier, not having to deal with paper forms, but also bringing that to the race as something else we can offer them, is being able to keep registration open, giving people the convenience of signing up on their phone, and all that good stuff. Obviously, the Run Sign Up website, having people being able to sign up online, that nice interface, all that good stuff has been a big tool. Some of the other tools, I guess, that we use that are a little bit, I would say, more on the back end of things, is I have had somebody build a custom app for us in a platform called Zoho Creator, that we use as kind of our main system for tracking everything about races. So I able to track our customers, staff, equipment, um, all races. We can track all the details about the race, all the tasks that we have to do internally for each race. We've built automations in there to do things like send out email reminders to customers, confirming details before the race. Send out reminders to our staff with details about like what equipment they're supposed to pull to take to the race that weekend, the customer contact, location, timing details, all that stuff we store in there, and use that. And that's been really helpful to just kind of keep all of us internally on the same page about all the events, what they're expecting from us, what we need to bring, all that good stuff. So that's been a big help for us as well. Um, we use, probably like a lot of others, we use QuickBooks to keep up with accounting. It's not the greatest, but there's just not a whole lot of options, it seems like, on the accounting front out there.
Hmm.
So we use that. And so those are the main tools, I would say, right now. We have others that we use too, like the e-sign platform for doing all of our contracts electronically. I have a tool that I use to create email templates and stuff that we can then either import into either the platform we use for our newsletter to customers, or we can create and pull into the Run Sign Up email platform too, to create our own templates as well.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like the Zoho Creator app that you guys have is kind of that all-in-one CRM/PM module to really, driving the back end of the business forward. So sounds like a really cool tool you guys have.
Yeah, it's been really useful. So originally I built it myself,
Mhm.
and then eventually, kind of over time, it just kind of got, the original version got a little bit kind of bloated as we just kind of added pieces here and there. So last winter during the off season is when I actually had a developer kind of rebuild it from scratch, using a new template. We export all the data, import it, and so now we have a much kind of more cleaner interface, kind of more streamlined. So that's been been a big improvement this season for sure.
Nice. Well, it sounds like those tools are, in addition to the RunSignup tools, are really helping with that growth. I mean, I was going to ask you, what do you feel like you're doing right, and what do you think others should consider doing? I'm sure you would you would say using as many of these tools as you can, but are there any other things that you would suggest to maybe newer? Because again, I had to look at the calendar to see it's 2023 and we're almost done with this year, but 14 years in on this at Run the East. For those newer timers, are there tools that they should be using to help either stabilize their company or grow their company? Any big hitters that you would suggest? Obviously, QuickBooks is one. If you're not using that, I think most of us in the industry are using something similar.
Hmm.
Is this Zoho Creator a path that you would suggest others to? It sounds like it's fairly labor intensive in terms of development,
Yeah,
and not so much off the shelf.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's worked great for us. But
Mhm.
as I said, I have a background in IT,
Right.
and so that's been helpful. And I have a developer that I can get involved in it. I would say for the average person, that may not be the best tool. I mean, there are other tools out there.
Sure.
I've heard a lot of people talk about things like Trello and Asana and
Yeah,
some
Monday, I
project
think, is
management
one.
tools like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What do you use for your project management?
Yeah, we have a custom built one. Um,
Okay.
Same kind of thing that we custom built the back end of. So, um,
I
yep.
I feel like that's something that, for somebody starting out, probably something like a, a project management tool, or even like when we were just starting out, I did everything in Excel. For
Right.
somebody just starting out, I think a simpler tool like that is going to work just fine. I don't think it's worth the investment of the development costs to,
Until you know
to
what you
build
want or
something
need.
custom, right?
Right.
Because that's exactly it. Because like this latest iteration, um, was a decent investment in cost to pay developers to do it. But at this point, after being in the business as long as I have, I had a much better idea of what the needs were, and the needs of supporting 160 plus races a year is a lot different than 10 or 15. And so
Right.
I would say
Right.
for some, newer timers, something simpler and free or low cost is probably going to be, um, the way to go. I think another tool that we've been experimenting with, that could be a good answer for a newer timer is a tool called Notion. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Notion or not, but
No.
it does project management type stuff, but it also does a lot more. So we've put all of our internal knowledge base into Notion,
Hmm.
and it plays nicely with other tools. So it's easy to embed, like a tutorial that we record or a Loom video or something real easy to embed in Notion. There's a mobile app, so it's a nice kind of all-in-one tool that does a lot of stuff. But it's a no code type setup. So
Nice.
that could be a good tool. The other thing I think for in terms of timers trying to grow their business is having a um, good tool or good system in place to be able to document and record processes, procedures. So we use one called Scribe,
Hmm.
and that basically lets you go through step by step. It automatically records and takes screenshots of you doing something, and then you can go in and manually edit it, and makes it easy to then pass that knowledge along. And so that's what I've found has been a real key to growth, is having that documentation to be able to pass along to my timers, so we make sure they're following this, everybody's following the same steps day in and day
Yeah.
out at different races, to help try to reduce errors, reduce variability, and try to make it ultimately where I'm getting fewer calls on Saturday mornings, so I'm not having to be, hand holding it every single race, but more just dealing with the bigger issues that come up.
Right, right. Well, it sounds like a lot of these tools also kind of lead you to the next thing I was going to ask about in terms of the competition and also keeping yourself what I've always called sticky
Mhm.
with your clients. And so, would you say that the communication, it sounds like you're very on top of your communication with your clients. What other ways are you making sure that those clients come back year over year and that you're able to continue to grow?
Well, I think communication is definitely, that's something that we've put a lot of emphasis in the last, say, 18 months or so,
Mhm.
because it was honestly something that we identified. I guess it was around last summer that we felt like we could be doing a better job. That there were some gaps, like unless a customer in the process, unless they had a question or they had an issue, quite a bit of time could elapse between when we were contacting them. So that's one area that we have been trying to improve, and I think we have made some big strides because as we've surveyed customers now after we've implemented some of these changes, the feedback we've gotten is that the communication has been just at the level they want, not too much, not too little, which is what we were
Awesome.
shooting for. So yeah, communication has been one, kind of trying to stay on their radar, which is challenging, right? Because for the majority of us in the timing industry, we may have a few customers that have more than one event a year, but for the most part, these are customers who have one event a year,
Hmm.
and so for a good chunk of the year, they're not, until they get into planning mode, they're not really giving a whole lot of thought to their event or their vendors, and so trying to stay on their radar with staying in touch, communications, um, just trying to think about things that we can do to, offer them to add more value. So we've done kind of taken a page out of the RunSignup playbook, and so we do an annual um, training for, I mean, it's open to anybody, but it's predominantly our current customers who attend.
Hmm.
And then we also have done and plan to do more of this next year, kind of some on-demand type, webinars, kind of like this, but targeted to our customers, um, with some more information about some of the things that they have, the most questions about, from what we hear from them.
Gotcha. Well, very cool. Sounds like it's you're doing a lot more than just the timing side. Even if you aren't into the, you know, as much into the production as you are into the timing, the other pieces of the puzzle that you've been putting together are a lot more intricate in regards to, having a full-blown CRM, custom CRM, having, your communication plan out there for not only events that you might own, but also for your customers and training people. That's really great. I think that a lot of folks that have learned how to use a lot of the tools that RunSignup has, or um, a lot of things that would help events grow and succeed, could take a page out of this playbook, your playbook, in regards to putting on some additional uh, learning mechanisms for events that both they work with and they don't work with in their areas, because that's, you're gonna drive others to want to work with you if you turn out to be the one that everybody's turning to for how to's and just how to do everything. So it's a really good way. I like how you're approaching that side of things. So great job with that. Um, so in
Thanks.
terms of,
Yeah.
I don't think we've even talked about what hardware you're using on the timing side. So what hardware are you guys timing with?
So we started out with IPECO,
Hmm.
and used IPECO for a number of years, and then shifted, starting maybe 5, 6 years ago. I don't remember exactly when. Started shift. We were, started into Trident UHF, and then right around, I can't remember, maybe 2000 or so, we sold the last of our iPico gear, and so we're all Trident UHF now.
Cool. And that integration with race day scoring, you feel like is strong, and haven't had any issues with that switch over with the hardware. I know a lot of timers after we roll off, we'll get people reaching out like, hey, Jamie's using race day scoring, and he's using, he was using run score, or you know, Jamie's was using iPico and is now using Trident. Like, tell us more about how that transition went. So how are those how have you felt like those transitions have gone in terms of, obviously we've talked about from run score to race day scoring, but over to Trident and then utilizing Trident with race day scoring. Has that been fairly seamless?
Yeah, that transition's been pretty easy, especially given that the majority of my staff now is new enough that they don't even remember iPico. So most of them have come on board in the last few years, and so they don't really remember a whole. And the few that are, I think, prefer the Trident setup, just being that we were still using the original iPico stuff, so the Trident's kind of been a step forward in technology, just given that it's newer. And then they really like the fold out mats to set up. The integration with race day has been pretty straightforward. The only thing that we did, and this was true of both iPico and Trident, is unlike some of the other hardware out there, is they don't really have middleware. And so race day is connecting live to the hardware and pulling that data in, which 99% of the time works great. In the event, though, that there were an issue that it loses connection or something like that, it gets a little bit more involved to try to connect to the hardware and get the data off. So we a few years ago actually hired a developer to build kind of our own custom middleware that connects, just real simple, connects to the hardware and is downloading all the data into a file. And then that way we can very easily pull that file into race day if we have to. And it's pretty infrequent that happens, but occasionally there'll be some kind of network issue or something like that, and we'll have to pull that file in. But doing that by having that middleware, that has made life a little bit easier to have. But otherwise,
backups to backups to backups.
Very simple. Yeah, exactly.
You never know when you're going to need it, and you might never need it, but when you do, you're glad you have it. Well, awesome. And so in terms of the other suite products that you use, race day suite products that you use, I know you mentioned the Checkin App. Are you using, I know you've played around with the Checkin App doing, multiple things with the Checkin App, not just straightforward. What kind of setups, like, have you done anything more complicated with that with the app to, I don't know, funky functions or anything like that at races? Or, do you have you normally setting up an admin and a volunteer mode? What's your normal process for your app setup?
For most races, we just will have one that everybody's using. We haven't really had a huge need or a huge demand from customers for like a second configuration. But we will do that at some events where either it's our event as opposed to one that we're doing for a customer, or if it's one that we're managing the whole event or something. What we'll do in some cases is have one device for our staff person, and so that's gonna give them the ability to do more stuff like event transfers and doing some of the more, not really complicated, but some of the stuff you don't necessarily want to give that device to everybody. And then we give the volunteers have a more simple, just set up with just checking people in and assigning them bibs, and then sending the questions or the exceptions to our staff person who can take care of that.
Yeah, gotcha. So in terms of other tools, you use RaceJoy quite a bit, right?
We've used RaceJoy primarily for virtual events. And then we've had a few, like we just had a half marathon week and a half ago.
Hmm.
And so what we found is, the most demand for RaceJoy from in-person events has been half marathons, other longer events like that.
Right.
And so we've had some utilize that, like this one a week and a half ago. They've, it's worked well for them. Um, and so that's kind of, as far as the in-person goes, that's where we've seen the most usage, is the longer events.
Awesome. Awesome. And you're pushing results up live. So you're
Correct.
using the results platform.
Yep, we are.
Cool. Are you have you gotten into the photos at all, or is that something
A
you leave to the
Um,
photography companies?
so so we don't really typically, we will at like one of our events that we own, in um, some cases I'll hire a photographer to come out, take pictures, and then upload them to RunSignup.
Hmm.
Um, for most of the events, though, where we're just timing, we will share information with our customers on, here, kind of showing them stuff like the photo platform, the sponsor platform, that type stuff. But then kind of leaving it up to them that if they have a volunteer taking pictures, they can set them up to be able to upload photos. But we don't get involved in actually taking the photos, but kind of
Sure.
helping show them, hey, here's this great free tool you can use for your photos. So check it out.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, so with everything, I mean, you've got your hands in just about every piece of the puzzle in terms of race directing and event management and back-end data management, timing. Um, what do you think for, moving forward, what do you think your biggest challenges are going to be? And how, or maybe not even for you, maybe for the industry, what do you think the biggest challenges are going to be moving forward, and how are you looking to address those?
Well, I think one of the big challenges that a lot of us see is the demographics of race participation. That if you look at it, the runners under 30 represent a pretty small percentage of the race demographics these days. And so I think one of the big challenges in the industry is going to be figuring out how to better attract and engage younger runners, because at some point older runners start phasing out of the sport. And I think as an industry we need to better address that, figure out what is it that younger runners want out of an event that they're not getting, because that, while that is a race director's challenge, it's going to affect those of us as timers too, because if as
Right.
numbers fall, that hurts us. Races start going away, that hurts us as well. So I think it's something we need to be paying attention to, because if we can offer suggestions and ideas to our customers, it helps ensure our job security as timers, but it also helps bring more value to the races as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I would
I think
say,
that's not just the running side either. It's a number of different sports are looking
sure.
at that. I know multi-sport triathlon is looking at the same issue, is that
Hmm.
the number of, or the the same number of people are participating. They're just moving up in age, and backfilling those younger age groups is becoming more challenging. So
Yep.
yeah, for sure. So anything else that you see on the horizon on the timing side?
I guess one thing that I have kind of wondered about, and we'll see how it shakes out over time, but the falling cost of hardware has been great in the sense that it's, adding more equipment has not been the investment that it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. The flip side is that makes it potentially easier for people to, buy a timing system and enter the industry.
Mhm.
What we've found here is in most cases where that's happened, a lot of these um, have not lasted particularly long.
Mhm.
But I mean, that could be, that's something that I think as timers we need to kind of be on the lookout for, as we were talking about earlier, doing things to keep keep in touch, keep customers happy. Um, you know, I think there's some segment of the of of race directors that would jump ship for a cheaper option.
Mhm.
Um, but I think a lot of them, if we can continue to do a good job and add value, that's the best thing we can do to keep events coming back year after year.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree, and I think that you're not the only one experiencing that. I think that's happening, nationwide, and those that are spending the time, energy, and effort into keeping in touch and providing quality service and as much value as they can at their races. People aren't going to, very few events are going to jump off of 10 cents cheaper prices or something like that if they're
Hmm.
getting the product that they want. Um, so, and then on the flip side of that, in terms of you and your business, do you have any, partnerships in the industry or offerings that you provide events to help kind of generate more revenue? Are you doing, are you offering other upsold items like awards and finisher medals, shirts? Are you doing any of that to help support the business?
A little bit of that. What we're for the most part though is I've had a long standing relationship with a local vendor that we use for shirts and whatnot.
Hmm.
And we actually have recently um, worked out an arrangement with them where essentially um, we can earn when we refer business to them. They do the legwork. We earn a little bit of commission off of each deal that then we can in turn I can use to buy either stuff for my races or stuff for my staff.
Right.
Which, to be honest, most of the races we work with are under 500 people, and
Hmm.
the margins and stuff like shirts are so slim that I'd rather get a deal like that where I don't have to put in, because the amount of effort that goes into going back and forth with proofs and
Hmm.
confirmations and all that stuff, I'd rather hand that off to somebody else, get a little commission for the referral, and let somebody else who works in that industry deal with it rather than you know investing that time, because we tried doing it that way for a couple years, and the margins are just so slim. You really have to do a lot of volume to really make it worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very true. Same with awards and medal. I mean, basically all of it. It's, you find what you're best at and you stick with that
Yeah.
and press on. So um, awesome. Well, before we get too far into this, I don't know. Let me check to see if we have any. Looks like we do have a couple questions. Um, Someone's asked, do you use video backup? If so, what type of video backup are you using and how are you using it?
So we don't really use video backup per se. The reason I say it like that is we do have like a GoPro type camera out at the finish line at every race, and we record video, but mostly just to upload to YouTube so people can see the video of their finish in the results page.
Well, let's
Um,
pause on that because some people don't even know about this. So explain specifically what you're talking about so that those timers that aren't doing exactly what you just said can do it as well.
Sure. So when you go into when you upload results to RunSignup, you can connect it to a YouTube video. And so basically what we do is we set the camera up, we start recording, a few minutes into the race before the first finisher. Then after the race, I use a video editing program to just combine because the way the GoPros work is they record for a certain, can't remember off the top of my head, but something like 13 minutes or something
Yeah,
per
it's like 13
file.
or 15 minutes. Yep.
Yeah. And so then I just merge those together, upload it to YouTube, and then on the RunSignup side, you just go in and give it the YouTube video ID, the time, what the first finisher's time was, and then when in the video that first person crosses the finish line. You save those settings, and then on the results page, it adds a video link next to each person's clock time. So then they can go there, they can click on that and see video of themselves finishing. And people have really liked that. We get a lot of feedback, that people really like seeing that. So I don't really consider that backup, although we have on occasion used that when we've needed to, for I guess what I would say like extreme backup purposes, because we have we always will have like 2 lines at a finish line, plus we have somebody with a handheld manual backup timer recording backup times as well that also come into race day scoring. So we've got multiple levels of backup. So the video, rarely do we need it for backup purposes, but more just for the video results purposes.
Yep, and just a reminder to those of you that are going to start playing with this, after Jamie just explained it, you do have to push up clock time. Even if it's a time trial event, you have to push up clock time out of scoring to the results side. You can then go in and hide it. You don't have to present clock time to everyone, but that clock time being on the, like within the results database, is how RunSignup parses out the video so that it links to the right people. So just keep that in mind when you're setting it up. So we did have another question about, and this might be Trident specific, I'm not sure. Are you using Gateway to connect readers to race day scoring?
Yeah, so that is a Trident specific question. Gateway is a Trident, I guess, sort of like middleware, but basically Trident readers have, and like probably a lot of other hardware, has the ability to pop a SIM card in it and then connect remotely to it. And so we use Gateway at some events. Typically at a standard race where we're right there at the finish line, I trust good old Ethernet more than anything else. So we're going to be connected Ethernet, but we do have occasions where, like, if we have a remote start, we'll use it for that, or if we have had a triathlon earlier in the fall where the split points were like, it was a kind of like a point-to-point race where all of the transitions were in different places miles away from each other. And so that was a great use case where we used Trident Gateway for that. And so we do use that and just set that up as another stream in race day and configure it that way, and it works just fine.
Gotcha.
The only thing I will say that does not work well, and I don't think this is Trident specific, but over the 4G connection is just not fast enough for like an announcer or something like that, where you need that data coming in fast. But for everything else, we've used it, starts, split points, or like at a race where we can't physically get to the finish line. So we had a race back in October where the finish line was inside of a baseball stadium. Well, they're not going to let us drive into the stadium, so we we got as close as we could, and then just use that 4G connection to stream data into race day.
Gotcha. And so you also mentioned that you're using, and for those of you watching, we are answering your questions, so feel free to ask away. But you also mentioned using backup solutions for scoring. So what are you using on the backup timing side of things?
So we've been the whole time using a device called it's called a Summit timer, and they're just kind of these little, pretty rugged, waterproof handheld timers. They actually were designed for timing like skiing events and stuff. So pretty tough little handheld timers. So that's what we've been using. I think eventually, I'm I'm tempted to start experimenting using the RunSignup timer app as a backup timer, like on a small, like on a phone or something like that.
Hmm.
Once I think what would be the difference maker to me, hint, hint, would be for it to, as opposed to having to configure something like Dropbox, for it to go directly into the same ecosystem as race day scoring, and then be able to like connect a cloud stream directly to that, as opposed to having to have Dropbox on both devices and adding that additional layer. So I think if that comes about, that's something we'll look at possibly moving to down the road.
Sure, sure. Well, I think I've made it through most of my questions. The only thing, I don't know if we have any additional questions from the Timing Peanut Gallery, but if not, do you have any other parting words of wisdom? Obviously, you've gone from 40 events, and granted, it wasn't overnight. I think I don't remember who I heard say this first, but you're a 10-year overnight success.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much everybody, nobody's actually overnight. So it takes us all a while to build a timing empire. And you've got your Eastern North Carolina empire with 160 races is a lot of, that's a lot of events to handle. So nice work on that. Any parting words of wisdom for those other timers? We've got a number of people that have said great job and you're doing great, and thanking you for all the information. So anything else before we part ways?
Um, well, thanks. I appreciate that. I would say probably the stuff that, if I could think of like the keys that have been the real keys to growing, have been finding and keeping good people. I have a great team of timers, several of them who have been doing this for years. I've got one. It's kind of funny. I've got one. It's essentially it's a husband, wife, and the wife's brother, all of whom grew up with their dad as a cross country coach. And so, they've been with me since they were like high school age kids, and now they're quote unquote grown-ups now, and they have a kid now. So, but this was that's been a key, is just having good people that I can count on, that are, I think for the most part, a lot of people who are not necessarily all runners, but they get it. They get
Right.
why runners are so concerned about their times, and finding people who get running, who also get customer service, interacting with runners and race directors and people like that. So I think having the right people, and then, as I mentioned earlier, is just really drilling down on having repeatable processes for people to follow, because it's
Mhm.
one thing, when it was just me going out to a race every weekend, it was one thing. I could just kind of, I know how I do things, but all of a sudden, when now there's more events each year where I'm not at than the ones that I am. And have to really make sure that we've got a well established, well documented process for everybody to follow. And that's also made it easier to onboard people, because as we've grown and as I've had some timers leave and move on, it makes it a lot easier to then get new people up and running in the same processes.
Sure. Well, we had a follow-up question to that, and that's where have you found the most success finding timers, and how are you paying them? Are you paying them hourly or by event? So I guess first part of that is, where are you finding your timers? Where are you finding luck finding timers? And then
So recently, in the past few years, I've had the most luck from my existing timers. So at some points when I really need people, I'll pay like a finder's fee to my existing timers if they refer somebody. Most of the time I haven't had to do that though, because a lot of my current timers, they'll just, in conversation with people they know, talk about, oh, well, what's your side job? And they'll start telling them about it and say, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. So that's been my number one source, has been referrals. I've also found some, I would say, second to that is just within personal network. People I know in the community from different places and whatnot, has been the second. I have done some in terms of asking around, like running club, running stores, that type of stuff. And honestly, that's not been as good a source as just getting, the current timers. They know, they get it. And they, they're not going to recommend somebody who's terrible. They don't want to work with somebody who's terrible. And so they're not going to recommend somebody who they don't think is going to be a good fit already. So I realize that's not a whole lot of help if you don't already have an additional staff. I would say, if not, I've had good luck with teachers. Teachers and coaches have been good timers in the past. That doesn't necessarily even have to be a runner, but somebody who's decent with technology, good with customer service, that type of stuff, I think are some of the keys that I usually look for.
Detail oriented.
Yeah, definitely.
So are you paying these guys, or have you focused on hourly rates for folks, or
No.
you're normally paying by the event?
Correct. Yeah, normally paying by the event for both the lead timer and the assistant timer, and then also paying for travel, mileage, whatever, for events that require travel.
Yep. And then someone else, I think you already mentioned this, but someone asked about the program that you use for staff training. I think you said that you had a knowledge base set up on Notion.
Yep.
And videos that you made on Scribe.
Yeah, I either use Scribe or Loom. So Loom is just simple, like video recording. So if I want to output a video, I'll use Loom. Scribe is what I'll use if I want to output it like more of a step-by-step tutorial.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, yeah, I think that got through. We had a couple people firing off some questions there. You piqued their interest when you started talking about staffing and growing that staffing pool. So I think we hit a normal thread here in the industry of, a lot of times the limiting factor in growth is onboarding new timers. So, and as you pointed out, one of the benefits of race day scoring, especially when you switched over from a command-based platform like RunScore, is things get easier. It's just easier to onboard because most people do not have programming experience or don't understand the query-based way of running, pulling information out of a database. So yeah, I think all those combined are a great way of helping to grow the business. So great points. Thanks for bringing those up. With that being said, we're
Sure.
pretty much at our hour. So I don't see any other questions popping up at the moment. So I'm going to say, Jamie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you watching, if you weren't able to stay on the whole time, this will be recorded. You can find it on RunSignup's YouTube channel. I'm sure it'll make its way onto Jamie's knowledge base as well. So if you want to find it on his site too. So yeah, thank you so much, Jamie, for being on and sharing your experience and your growth on building a timing business. So thank you so much.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, have a great day, and we'll chat with you soon. Take care.
Look, man, you can do this. As soon as they show, oh, actually, they're here now. Okay, take it away. Let them know. Thanks for watching the video. No, don't get too close to them. Just say thank you for watching the video. You can subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and all if you want to see more. And don't forget to ask for that like. You can do this. I believe in you. Take it away. Well, we tried.